When I went to seminary, I had to take out loans on top of undergraduate loans. I also worked some jobs on the side. I worked at the Gap. I worked as a special ed assistant in the Minneapolis public schools. To save money, I lived in the seminary dorms with other wannabe pastors, which is exactly as cool as it sounds. But it was cheap. While I was in pastor school, Beth and I got married. She had a good job, and still, it took us years after graduation to dig out from under my school debt. And then, about a decade after I graduated, a generous gift came to the seminary. A gift large enough that suddenly every student could attend tuition free. Free. The thing that I had paid for was now simply given away. Isn't that right, Pastor Olson Pop? And I'll be honest, a part of me was, and maybe still is, a little salty. I did the math. I stood there with my loans paid in full, receipt in my hand, and I thought, where was that when I needed it? I mean, I knew it's a good thing, and yet it didn't seem fair. It wasn't fair. But there was a question that I couldn't quite shake. Why was I resenting someone else's generosity? Why was I resenting a gift someone else received? And as I got a little perspective, I started to realize what that gift made possible. A young pastor could begin her ministry with no debt around her neck. A church facing real headwinds, shrinking involvement, financial dollars stretched, more anxious than it used to be. Now, because of this gift, could be led by people who were healthier, freer, more whole, because they didn't have to start the work of ministry already exhausted and afraid about how they were going to make ends meet. I realized the gift wasn't a slight against me. It was a gift to the whole church. It's a gift, in a way, to all of us. This morning, Jesus tells us a parable that's kind of similar. A landowner goes out at dawn to hire workers for his vineyard. He agrees with them on the usual daily wage, a denarius, and then sends them into work. It's a fair deal. Honest day's work for an honest day's pay. Then at 9 a.m, he finds more people standing around in the marketplace and sends them in too. At noon again, more folks get to work. At 3 again, and then at 5. At 5 o'clock, with only 1 hour of daylight left, he goes back one more time and hires whoever is still standing there. And when evening comes, he pays them, starting with the last ones hired. The 5 o'clock workers, the 1 hour workers, step up and receive a full day's wage, a whole denarius for only 1 hour of work. You can imagine the people at the back of the line start mathing real hard. If that's what 1 hour gets, imagine what 12 will get. And then they reach the front. And they receive exactly what they were promised. A denarius. the same, and they grumble. These last worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us, who have borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat. It's a fair and legit complaint. I don't think the grumbling workers are the bad guys here. It's a complaint most of us would make. They worked all day in the heat. They did more. And something deep and old in us says that more work should mean more pay. That's not greed. It's just fairness. It's how the world should work. If you have ever watched someone get something that you felt like you worked twice as hard for, you know exactly how those workers felt. But if you can, just for a moment, put yourself in the 5 o'clock workers' boots. They've been in that marketplace since before dawn. They stood there at 6 in the morning and watched others get picked. They were there at 9 and got passed over again. They're good workers, flexible. They're willing to do what's ever needed. But at noon, nothing. At 3, still nothing. As 5 o'clock gets close, the sun is starting to go down, and they're still standing there. Each passing hour makes it clearer just how little they'll be bringing home tonight. And that's heavy, because there are people that they love at home. There's a family counting on them. And today it looks like they'll have nothing to show. That's not laziness. The text, Jesus' parable, doesn't say that they were lazy. It says no one hired them. They wanted the work. Nobody picked them. And then at the very last hour, someone comes back for them. You also, go in the vineyard. Before there's any argument about wages, before anyone is paid a cent, something has already happened to this one worker that is pure grace. They've been seen. They've been wanted. They get to work. They get to be one of the people who did something today instead of one of the people who got passed over. For them, the miracle isn't the surprise at the end of the day. The miracle is that the landowner kept coming back. The landowner could not stand to leave anyone in the marketplace with their hands empty. And here's the thing. It's not just that one worker. Pay attention to what this parable does. We walk in seeing one gift, one apparent injustice, the same full day's wage for everyone, and the unfairness of it all. Because from where we stand, that's all we can see. But this parable, the story is crowded with gifts. The gift of work for people who had none. The gift of being called in. The gift of being seen at 5 o'clock. The gift of a landowner who keeps coming back. The gift of being made equal to someone who assumes that they're better than you. There is generosity and grace scattered across every hour of that whole long day. falling on everyone. And we miss most of it because our eyes get fixed on the one line of the ledger that we think we're owed. That is what the landowner is really asking when he turns to the grumbler. He says, and this is how it sounds in the Greek, he says, is your eye evil? Is your eye evil because I'm good? It's not mainly about envy. It's about sight. A scorekeeping eye is a darkened eye. It can only see what it's owed. It goes blind to everything else that God is doing, blind to the grace that is falling all around it. And the gospel, the good news of this morning is that God is in the business of healing darkened eyes. God is transforming a world measured by fairness into a world that is overflowing with grace. And grace, by definition, isn't fair. It's a gift you never earned and could never keep score of, even if you wanted to. What if we were able to live like that? To hear that someone got something good, something that maybe you weren't given, something that maybe they didn't even earn, and you started to have your heart feel bigger instead of smaller. To be enlarged by someone else's blessing instead of being diminished by it. Friends, that's not a burden that God is laying on you this morning. That's the freedom that God offers. The freedom to stop standing at the front of the line with a receipt in your hand, doing the math, and instead to start seeing how much generosity has been falling all day long on all of us. Who are we? Who are we to resent someone else's generosity? All of us are workers for whom the landowner keeps coming back. We stand in God's vineyard by grace, not by merit. And God, who owns the whole vineyard, is good, extravagantly, scandalously, wonderfully good. And that God is still, right now, this very morning, going back out into the marketplace, looking for everyone that the world has left standing there and saying, you also go in. There's room, even for you. Amen.